So till yesterday, we were talking about the flows. Today, we are going to take a new topic, which is called as a validation rules. Validation rules. So we are going to discuss about the validation rules. We will see what is validation rule and what is this use, what is the use of it. And we'll see how to prepare validation rule in Salesforce. And next we will see how can we validate the data before insert. How can we validate the data before insert or after insert? We will see that practically. Now coming to the topic, what is the validation rule? Validation is nothing but a verification. We have a validation rule. When I say validation is nothing but a verification. Validation is nothing but a verification. So that means a developer is going to verify the data or validate the data. Validation rule is nothing but we are going to verify the data or validate the data that is entered by the user. And when this get executed, validation rules are always executed before the insert. Validation rules are executed before the inserting the data into the database. That means before insert concept. Before inserting the data into the database, the validation rules are going to execute it. What are the data is entered by the user is valid information or not. That's what we are going to verify. Or like what is the data that user has entered? Is it a valid data or not? Is it in the correct format or not? So we are going to verify this. Why we need to verify the data? What is the purpose of verifying the data? Because in order to maintain the accuracy and quality of the data. Because in Salesforce, we always have to maintain the accuracy and quality of the data. So in order to maintain the quality of the data, we always have to verify whatever is user entered or whatever is the developer is entered. Whoever is inserting the record within the Salesforce, we wanted to validate everything, each and every field we have to validate it. There are some fields which are going to validated by the Salesforce. That's the reason they give us the mandatory information. But seems like, let's assume that we also created some custom fields, okay? And in some scenarios, we wanted to check whether the user has entered the valid data or not, in the right format or not. Let's take an email address. Email address, sometimes what happens, if it is an email address will be like some name will be there here, and then @ some gmail.com, right? But some members will enter @in. So is it a valid? This is not a valid, right? So we have to cross verify whether the email address is entered valid or not. If it is not valid, before inserting the data into the database, we wanted to highlight the user saying that this is not the correct format of the data. This is not the quality data. Please enter the quality data in right format so that we can go ahead and accept it. So these kind of information we have to verify in the Salesforce. Salesforce especially deals with a data because Salesforce itself is a table. Salesforce itself is a table, right? So for example, I have a table. Let's assume that in this table, we have some information is there. Let's assume that first name, last name, and the email. Let's assume age is there. Here I have a age. Okay, age is there. Now inside the age, if user enters the age in the word like 23 or 20, if I enter this, he has, when I read it 20, it makes sense. But what is the age? Age accepts only the number. Age accepts only the number. If you write it in the text format or if you write it in the word format, this is not the right. This is not the right because we are expecting the number format, right? Age has to be between 0 to whatever the 100 or whatever the number is there. But we have to enter between the 0 to 9. You take any number between the 0 to 9, could be 100, 50, 70, 80, 20, 10, whatever the number, but it has to be always, the numbers has to be between the 0 to 9. If you try to enter your age in the format of text or your age is format of the word, then age is does not accept. So in this case, we need to validate what is the data is entered by the user. Did they enter the number or did they enter the word, right? So we have to validate and throw a message on itself there. We should not wait for the till it submits. Okay. Till it submits to the database, we should not wait it. Immediately, we should throw a message to the user saying that you have to modify this data. Otherwise, we are not going to accept the record, whatever you have entered, right? That is another one. So like this kind of a validations, we have to do it inside for any object. It's not only the single object, for every object we have to do it. So how do we do it? It's depending on the developer. So here in terms of validation rules, there are two types of validation. Two type of validations. One is client-side validation. And second one is server-side validation. Server-side validation. What is the client-side validation? Is nothing but it's a browser level doing the validation. Client-side is nothing but browser. What is the client-side validation? Is nothing but validating the data at the browser side. Whereas server side is nothing but database server. Server side is nothing but database server. What is the server side validation? Is nothing but validating the data at the database server, right? So client side validation and server side validation. Now let's assume that so we have a table, which is assume that this is the account table. Inside the account table, we have some information, ID, name, and the rating. and we have an industry, and then we have assume annual revenue. So this is my account object. This is the account object. Inside the account object ID. ID is created by the Salesforce, 18-digit ID. I need not to worry about it. Then we have a name. Name is a mandatory, right? Which is provided by the Salesforce. This is a mandatory field. And whenever we are creating the new record, name, we have to always enter the name. Then we have a rating and industry. And then we have an annual revenue. Right? So let's assume that name, only the name is mandatory by the Salesforce. Now in some scenario, I want the industry to be mandatory. Industry as well as the revenue has to be entered by the user. So these two are mandatory by us. When I say by us, it's the developer is going to decide it. Okay, we want the industry. Whenever the new record is created by the user or by data loader or by anybody, whoever is creating the record, they have to make sure to enter the industry and annual revenue information. Right? What is the annual revenue information? Like how long it will be there? Can I enter any revenue or it has to be in between some particular revenue? So let's assume that annual revenue has to be between the 1 lakh to the 50 lakhs. Let's assume that 50 lakhs, 1 to 50. Annual revenue has to be between the 1 to 50. Right? It has to be between the 1 to 50. If somebody enters the 70 or 70 lakhs, 100 lakhs, then it should not accept it. So the condition is revenue has to be between the 1 to 50. Now this is account object. Let's assume that I have a UI. Let's assume that I have a UI. This is the UI. Inside the UI, let's assume we have a account name, and I need a rating and industry and annual revenue. Right, whatever the values are here, I'm taking the same thing. Then below we have a save button and cancel button. This is account name and rating. And then we have an industry. And the last one is annual revenue. Okay, so the last buttons which we have is save and cancel button. Save and cancel button. So this is a client. Client is nothing but user. This is a client and this is server. This is a table which is stored into the database. Server is nothing but database. Client is nothing but browser. Right? Now, user will come and open the information, open the UI here. They will open the UI and user will try to enter the information. Let's check some information here. Let's assume that Rahul, the data is not visible. Right, Rahul, and rating is, let's assume that warm. And industry is banking. Now coming to the annual revenue, let's assume that user has entered 75,000. Right. Now, as soon as user click on a save button, user clicked on a save button. As soon as user clicked on a save button, it is going to, what happened? It is going to update. It is going to send the data to the database. It will call the database. In the database, it will check where is my account object. So what it will do, it will go to the name first. Then it will go to the rating. Then it will go to the industry. Now, when it goes to the annual revenue, then annual revenue have something called validation here. So I'm going to say you are passing the 75,000, which is not going to validate. So what will happen? It will send back to the UI saying that client saying that this is not acceptable. This record cannot be acceptable. Now tell me which way is a validation is right to do. Now once it goes to the database, validate everything and send back to the client is a valid one, or doing the validation on the client side. Like as soon as a user enter Rahul warm banking 75,000, then as soon as I click on a save button, then it should immediately pop up the message instead of touching the database, directly populating it here. Right? Whatever I told right now, going into the server side. So as soon as I click on a save button, it goes to the server side and it will check each one of the field. And as soon as any field is not validated, it will throw back to the user saying that this is not the valid. So what is this? This is basically a server side validation. This is server side validation. But in case if it is a client side validation is where I am doing the updates on the client itself. I'm doing the update on the client side itself. That is called as a client side server. Instead of touching the server, I'll not touch the server. So in the client side, I'll not touch the server. So instead of touching it, I'll just directly do it within this. What is that means? That means is now I have this client side, right? When it is a client side, I'll just check what is the value here. What is the value of Rahul? What is the value of what is the value of banking? What is the value of annual revenue? And then I'll click on a save button. Within this only, I'm going to throw an error message. I'm not even calling the server side. All the validations are happening in the client side only. So which one is more comfortable here? Which one is the faster? Client side server, client side validation or server side validation?
Client side, of course.
Client side validations are more recommended. Why it is recommended? What is the reason for why it is recommended to do the validation at the client side validation?
If it is done at the server side, it will take much time. Response will be, the load will be increased in server side.
Right. So performance time. Performance time is high. And if I do the client side validation, what it is going to happen, it reduces the number of calls, number of server calls. It reduces the number of server calls to the client side. And one more thing, it reduces the, basically it reduces the request to the server call. Salesforce server. Reduce the number of requests to Salesforce server. Number of server requests to the Salesforce server. So generally, in order to implement the client side validations, general, in terms of normal, any technology, in general, in order to implement client side validation, what we do is we have to write a scripting language. We have to write a scripting language. That language can be a JavaScript, can be a jQuery, can be a Angular JS, or so many JavaScript languages we have. So we have to write a scripting language. It could be a JavaScript, it could be a jQuery, it could be an Angular JS. Now the question is, do I need to learn separately a scripting language? No, here we do not need to learn the scripting language separately. In Salesforce, okay, that is fine, but we need not to write. But where can I write the scripting language in Salesforce? Where can I accommodate this scripting language? Is Salesforce provided any predefined one, or do we have anything which we have to write it from the basic? So in Salesforce, in order to accommodate, we have something called page layout, right? Page layout. In the classic or lightning, whichever the way is there, we use the page layout. But in the page layout, I cannot write anything. Page layout does not allow. Page layout does not allow. Page layout does not allow me to write a single code. Write a code. It will not allow. Even single line of the code, it will not allow to write it. So in this case, how can we do it? So basically on the page layout, I wanted to have the validation. As soon as page is submitted, as soon as the page is entered, whatever we do on the page layout level, we wanted to do it all the kind of validations on the page layout. So that's the reason Salesforce has provided a functionality which is called as a validation rule. So these validation rules are, though we are writing at the object level, but as soon as the page is submitted, immediately my validation rule is going to hit there. So in order to accomplish this page layout level, validating the data, in this case, we can implement directly applying the all the logic into the validation rule. We can write every logic into the validation rule. So validation rules are fired on the UI. Validation rules are fired on the UI. Now, how to prepare a validation rule? How to prepare a validation rule? Where should I need to go and where should I need to write the validation rule? So whenever we are creating a validation rule, we have to use certain process, as well as we have a ready-made function, which we have a ready-made functions that are provided by the Salesforce. Ready-made functions that are provided by the Salesforce. So we have to use those ready-made functions and implement an expression. Using this ready-made function, we can implement how long we want the expression, we can implement that expression. And what are those ready-made functions? Let's start with the smaller one. So first one is, we have a IsBlank. We have a IsBlank and there is a IsNull. Let's start with this. What is the IsBlank and what is the IsNull? So when initially Salesforce has came up, when Salesforce started using it, so initial days Salesforce has released IsNull. They were not having the IsBlank. They were just having the IsNull. And later on, they have introduced the IsBlank. IsBlank concept came after some time, or after a couple of, or maybe a couple of years, I can say. But initially, they started with IsNull. Now, what is this means? IsBlank and IsNull. What do I need to give the values? So what I have to check is my field value is null or not. So what I have to give is blank field name. Which are the field that I wanted to check? Give here field name. Okay, so basically this function is used to check whether the specified field, whatever the field that we are mentioning it, the specified field is blank or not. When I say blank, what is that means? So blank means it is going to check the data type with the text, the data type with the numeric number. Both can be verified in the IsBlank. When as IsNull, IsNull also we have to check is my field is null or not. So IsNull is nothing but this is also, this function is also check whether the specified field is null or not. Specified field is null or not. But when I say null, does it work for the text? It does not work for the text. It is only works for the number. IsNull only works for the number. Now giving with the example, let's say example. Now is blank, I'm going to check name. Is my name is blank or not? Is blank industry? Is my industry blank or not? If it is a blank, throw a validation error. If it is not blank, go ahead and submit it. Then I can check is blank is blank HR email ID __ C. So I'm going to check is email ID blank or not. Is email ID blank or not? Right? So coming to the IsNull. IsNull is going to cross verify same, but only thing is that it is going to work for the number. So example is null. What is the field value? Annual revenue. Is null amount. Only the data type that is a number, only that it is going to check. Right? So like these are the very small one. Slowly we'll go into to see how to use it. Now one thing, how many validations rules can I create it per object? Like we have a 10,000 records, 10,000 fields are there. In a single object, assume that 10,000 records are there. Or I have 100 fields are there. 100 fields are there. So can I write a validation for each and every field and I can activate it? Like what is the limitations on that? So coming to the limitations per object, we can have maximum 100 active validations. 100 active validation rules we can implement. In case if I wanted to give, I wanted to go with for all the more than 100 validations rules, I have to implement it. So in case if you wanted to do that more than 100, contact Salesforce, or what they're going to suggest is when you contact them, if you have more than 100 validation rules, why don't you use the trigger? Go with the trigger and write a logic. So that's what they are going to suggest it. So if you have a more validations, go ahead and write the trigger. In the trigger, before insert, write the logic or write the code to validate the each and every field. So validation rules are pluggable. Whenever I want it, I can switch on. Whenever I do not want, I can switch off. Now, where should I go to write the validation rule? Let's go ahead. Let's go to the setup. There are different ways we can go to the validation rules, right? Either, let's go ahead and search validation. It is not there here. Okay, they have removed it from here. Okay. Now in Lightning, you go to the object manager, look for which object you wanted to implement the validation rule. Which option, which object you wanted to implement the validation rule. So for example, we wanted to implement account level. So on the account level, bottom of the screen, you will see validations rule. On the validation rule, you can see validation rules. 0 items sorted by rule name. There is nothing is there. But in case if you are in the classic, and if you wanted to go to the validation rule, setup and search here validation rule, right? So validation rules is going to appear based on the object level. Validation rules you can see based on the object level. So appointment bundle, invoice, assert, ideas, but where are we planning to implement? I'm planning to do it in the accounts level. So I can go to the account and I can click on this validation rule. Or else another way to go to the validation rule is click on this record. Now you see while analyzing the record, you feel that somehow I wanted to implement a validation rule on the account side. Now you are lazy to go to the setup and search it there. So in that case, what you can do is click on this arrow mark. Here you will see inside the post.com. This is the post.com. Go to this post.com, see here view validations. So click on this view validation, it will directly redirect you to the account validation rule page. Right? Which are the way you wanted to go. Either you can go to the record level, either you can go from the in setup, search the validation rule and look for the particular object, which are the object you want. Now let's go ahead and create a new validation rule. Now here in the validation rule, let's understand the screen first. So this validation rule is define a validation rule by specifying an error condition. We have to specify the error condition and corresponding error message. The error condition is written as a Boolean formula expression that returns true or false. This always, whatever we write a conditions here. So the main logic has written here, error conditional formula. The main logic has to be written in the error conditional formula. So whatever we write here, the output of the error condition formula is either true or false. That's it. It will not give any output. It will tell this condition formula whether it is a true or false. Right? So what are the functions? How do I know that predefined functions? So these are the functions. Here we have a categorized all functions, or if you are looking for only the data and time function, or if you are looking for the logical function, or if you are looking for the math or text advanced, which are the one you can select that. But in case if you wanted to see everything together, click on all function. So when you click on all function, you will see all the function names here. All the functions, these are the predefined function. Now, if you do not know how to use this function, now click on this function. As soon as you click on this, bottom you will see how to use it. How to use ABS number. What is this? Returns the absolute value of a number. Absolute value. For example, if you have a decimal, 239.9999 is there, right? So ABS of that number, it will take round figure. Absolute value of that number, either it will take 240 or it will take 239 based on the dot decimal value. Now, right now, which one we are looking at? IsBlank we are looking at. So highlight this IsBlank. highlight this IsBlank. So it is going to give me the information how to use the IsBlank. IsBlank, what I need to give expression. What is the output I'm going to, what is it is going to verify it? Checks whether an expression is blank and return the value true or false. In case if I need more information, go to the help on function. Help on this function. There is a underline with the help on this function. So you can come to here and you can ask the member. So basically it is going to redirect you to the community. In the community, you can ask anybody. So Trailblazer community. So go to that community, ask them that how to use that particular one. It will not give any documentation. Basically, it is going to redirect you to the community. Now, in case here is the function, right? I wanted to place it here. I wanted to place it here, but how can I bring it? I can directly drag it here. No, I cannot drag it. So in order to place it onto the error condition formula, I need to click on the insert selected function. Insert selected function. So as soon as I click on insert selected function, the entire expression is going to come and sit here. The entire expression is going to come and sit here. Now here what I can do is I can give, for example, here we have a account. Let's take this is account side. Okay, so let's take the account side. Okay, I wanted to make sure that account side has to be entered while creating the record. Now in this expression, remove the expression. Now if you don't know the API field name of the account side, now what you can do, on top we have two buttons. Insert field, insert operator. When I say insert operator, this is a plus minus mathematical operation. Now, in order to get a field, you have to click on insert field. When you click on an insert field, automatically it will take to the object account because we are in the account object. We are in the account object. So validation rule, as soon as I click on insert field, it is going to cross verify where are my where is the button is clicked, on which object is that button is clicked. So it is going to cross verify, pull all the fields related to the account. Now I'm interested in account side. Now I'll insert, select that account side and insert it. So what will happen? Site came, right? Now check the syntax. No error. If there is any error, by clicking on the check syntax, it is going to give me the error, right? 3 sections are there here in the validation rule. First one is name of the validation. Second one is error conditional formula. And the third one is error message. Only 3 sections are there. So let me give here account side validation. Account side validation. Now description, you can give whatever we want. Right now I'm going to give the description account side validation. If you want more in detail information, we can write into the description. Now what I'll say here, my second section is also done. Now I'll come into the third section, which is the error message. In the error message, 2 things are there. Whether do I need to show the error on the top of page or do I need to show it on the field level? If I wanted to show at the top of the page, select the top of the page. But in case if I wanted to show the field, then select that field. Which field? Account side. So what is that means? When I'm trying to enter, if I do not enter the value here in the account side, at the exactly bottom of this field, I'm going to get the error. So I'll say, please enter account side. Please enter account side. That's it, done. Now, as I mentioned, validation rule is pluggable. So right now here it is active, but in case if I wanted to deactivate it, edit and deactivate it and save it. That means I have switched off the validation rule. It will not execute it. Now let's go ahead and see. So validation rule is executed on the before insert or before update. Either I do the insert or update before it is going to work. Now account name I have given, account site I have not given. Click on site. So what happened? Please enter the account site. Let's give place. Save. Fine. So validation rules are hit on during the before insert or as well as it is going to hit me the before update. Clear? Interview questions. What is validation rule? What is the limit of the, what is the limit of number of validations on per object? Active validation. What is the active validation? How many active validation can be created? Validation rules can be created. How many validation rules can be created? Third one. What are the different type of validation rules? What are the different type of validation rules? What is client side server? What is a client side server validation? What is server side? Client side validation and server side validation. What is the difference between, what is the difference between the client side validation and server side validation? What is the navigation path to go to? What is the navigation path to reach validation rule? How can we deactivate validation rule? Where can I find predefined functions? How to decide where the error message should display? Where the error message should display. Okay. Any other that we covered?
IsBlank and IsNull difference.
What is the difference between IsBlank and IsNull? With example. With example as well as the screenshot. That means implement a validation rule here and show the output. Clear? Any questions before I log out? Okay.
No, I have,
Yeah.
but not regarding to the validation. And let's suppose we have the requirement that we have to send an email, like we
Is it
have
related to
sent a list.
validation? Is it related to
No.
validation rule?
No.
Okay, let me stop recording.